full disclosure here, for the first time this week, I moved Ohio State one spot ahead of Oregon. And I agree with Pollack.
How could you do that? They lost to them. You're so wrong.
They did,
You're an
and
idiot.
I don't know that I'm going to leave it that way necessarily. But Ohio State has looked significantly better. But Pollack makes a great point. They really haven't played great competition. If you look at the numbers right now, Ohio State has a top 15 strength of schedule. Ohio State's barely in the top 100, Oregon being 15. The strength of record, Oregon is 8 spots ahead of them in the top 20, and they beat them. Why I did this is probably because Oregon had its best performance against UCLA that it's had in weeks, but Ohio State just sort of looks the part. Kirk, you've got them at number 2. What do you think the biggest difference is since that loss to Oregon?
Well, again, we know the biggest difference to me is more about C.J. Stroud settling in and the firepower that he has around him. That was the question when its team started their year. They didn't have a quarterback that had attempted a pass, so how good was the quarterback going to be with all the freaks that he has around him? And now we know an answer. This team is going to be hard to stop. They can even if their defense isn't that much improved, they're going to be hard to slow down. They can get into those shootouts with anybody they play. The Oregon part of this is interesting because you're right. Once you go head-to-head, everybody says, well, they should always be ahead of Ohio State. Oregon, for 3 or 4 weeks, was trending in a very different direction. It wasn't just the Cal game. It wasn't just the Stanford game. It's been a trend. So the greatest thing that happened to Oregon is down 14 at UCLA. They're able to turn that thing around and take the lead and show America on a big stage that they can play and win a big game. But I'm not a guy that just because they won in week 2, whether it's Oregon, Ohio State, or anybody, the teams trend and change. Now, at the end of the year, Rece, you're right. If they're both, one's a Pac-12 champ, one's a Big Ten champ, and they're 12-1 versus 12-1, then I think maybe you have a different discussion, and maybe Oregon has that trump card at the last week of the year. But at this point, I have no problem putting Ohio State ahead of Oregon based on the way they've played the last 4 weeks.
And not only did that question mark with C.J. Stroud, it turned into an exclamation point. Like he looks. If I'm buying stock in somebody like him and Bryce Young, to me are superstars. They look so daggum good. But I just point to the same things we talked about. When you play Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, and Maryland in a 4-week order, after you gave up 35 to Oregon, you assign your defensive coordinator you take him out of the mix, you assign another guy to play calls. Kirk, I've never seen a defense change schematically so quickly in the middle of a season or the beginning of a season from a couple games to a couple games down the road as I've watched with Ohio State. So, that's still, I want to see it. Penn State's got some weapons. I think Sean Clifford's banged up still. I don't think he's 100%. But, man, I'm agreeing with you. I'm all in on their offense. But their defense still has a lot to prove to continue to be one of those teams that I'm saying this is the number 2 team in the country.
I agree with you. And when you look at their schedule, it sort of speaks to, of course, they're going to blow out these teams. Indiana is not nearly the Indiana that we expected to see this season. They've dealt with some injuries also. So it's hard to get a read on just how far Ohio State has come by watching them play a Maryland, a Rutgers, or Indiana. But I will say the defense seems to be playing with more confidence. And I know, again, the teams they're going against haven't been very impressive, but we've also seen this same defense struggle against a Tulsa, struggle against offenses that were not don't have a lot of firepower. But in the last few weeks, they look like they're playing with a lot more confidence. And a lot of times in college football, it will come down to the confidence you have in the guy next to you, your ability to get home on blitzes, your ability to cover. And I don't know that there is another offense in the Big Ten that they'll see that even comes close to resembling the kind of things that Oregon did to them. And so as their schedule moves forward, they're going to deal with a Penn State team when Sean Clifford and that offense didn't look great against Illinois as they lost that game. We got Michigan, Michigan State. Those are physical, downhill running teams that try to go off a play-action pass. And whoever they see in the Big Ten championship, if they get through the East, will be that same type of offense. So we may not find out what this defense really is until they get through the Big Ten and maybe get into a playoff and have to go against another offense with some firepower.
Yeah, we're not sure if they're going to see that Saturday or not, though James Franklin says that Sean Clifford, 100% for Ohio State. Not sure he quite looked at against Illinois this past weekend in that disappointing loss for the Nittany Lions. We'll see how he plays against Ohio State in what is a huge weekend.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.